Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Way That I See It. My name is Lucy Superfox, and this is my podcast. So this is another live baby, all on Instagram. So if you aren't following me on Instagram, make sure to do so at Lucy Superfox and at Next Level Lucy for my mindset coaching page. So this is my lifestyle page where I have my fun, where I talk about all the things I do. And then my Next Level Lucy page is kind of my coaching page, my programs, or where you can work with me. So first of all, I wanted just to frame this week's topic, which is the topic of burnout, right? And I think this is a label that's given to people that, at Christmas get a cold, or people that just kind of feel like, oh, I'm burnt out from a rough week at work. And it's not to say you don't feel that. You don't feel the sense that the week's been tough or the week's been hard or whatever. But what I want to explain to you is what burnout actually is from a chemical point of view, like what actually happens in your body, and then how that can show up in ways that are often confused as other things. So I think one of the things that happens with burnout is it can often be mixed up with other things that happen, and it can actually be worked on and regulated the same way that we can from anything that happens in life. It's just intentional. Now, I'm not sat here as someone who's like, okay, I've nailed it, like I've absolutely smashed it. Like, as you guys know, I teach as I go, like I teach as I learn. So as I'm learning, I'm sharing, because one of the best ways that I personally have learned is by communicating what I know back out, and then I guess putting it into my own words, right? It's like reading a textbook when you're at school and then putting it into your own words. That's the exact same way that I learn. So when I am sharing with you, it's coming from a place of like, this is what I'm going through, or I've just come through, subject to what it is and how personal it is. And this is why I'm sharing it with you, because I know that someone's going to resonate. So the first thing is, burnout for me used to look like very obvious. Like I used to work a very stressful job. I used to work in the events industry. I was 25, a senior, manager at a very big corporate company. Used to travel a lot, did international product launches. Like I was a big deal. Like I had a big job. Like what my job entailed was, all the hours, all the commitment, plus all the corporate politics. Like there was a lot to deal with. And then I went through a period of grief where I lost someone, really close to me. And then I also went through a breakup. And then I also got really sick. In the space of 6 months, I basically was really, really poorly, had to have surgery. I then lost someone really close to me, and I went through a breakup of like 7.5 years at this point. So let's just say I was in a hole is a freaking understatement. And one of the things that happened is I developed insomnia. Now, insomnia is quite an extreme experience, and if you've never had it, I wouldn't wish it on you. But I basically developed insomnia, and the reason why I think that happened is I was so overstimulated, I was so dysregulated from the trauma that my nervous system and my body had been through, and emotionally what I was processing, that my body physically didn't feel safe enough to sleep. And this is what happens when you lie down and you're anxious in bed, right? When you've got the space to think and your brain just goes into overdrive, and then you're like, I can't sleep, and your chest feels like it's pounding, right? That happens because you've actually then, at that time of day when everyone else is asleep, when the house is quiet, when the TV's not on or the music isn't playing or there aren't emails pinging, you're like that. And then the anxiety can creep up and catch you. And I think one of the things that I personally have always done is try to fight things or push things down or overcome them maybe quicker than I was ever ready to do. And so what happened was, at that time, I was trying to deal with everything and carry on working, because the person I lost who was close to me, their mum was actually worked with me. So I basically also took on elements of her job in that time window. And basically my life became a clusterfuck overnight. And the reason I share all of that is to know that even in that window where I was obviously burnt out, like obviously, oh, we've got a fly's joined the podcast. Like obviously I was burnt out. Of course I was. That was obvious. I still didn't fucking know. And you kind of say things like, I'm just tired. I need a break. I need a holiday. And you treat it as normal. Well, this fly loves me. You treat it as normal. And what I want to really come away from is normalizing burnout as either a measure of success or normalizing burnout as just a process we all have to go through. And that's fucking bollocks, because we do not all have to suffer and sacrifice and kill ourselves. Like that's not how we grow. We don't have to manifest like that. We don't have to create success like that. That's a story that society has told us to keep us moving in a certain direction. And so basically I lived my life in cycles of burnout, escapism, burnout, escapism, whilst creating a very successful career, whilst creating multiple businesses, whilst doing amazing things. But at the same time, I went through a period of burning myself out and then escaping, burning myself out and then escaping. And one of the things I've really worked out is that I've spent a lot of my life regulating myself. So what that means is determining how I feel, whether life is good or not, based on my outside environment. This is very common if you have ADHD. It's very common if you have a sensitive nervous system, is that your life will be directly related to how good your life is on the outside. So you will feel great if everything on the outside is great. You will feel shit if everything on the outside is shit. The truth being, though, we all know, and if you do any personal development, that your outside life is a direct representation of what you believe to be true about yourself and what you're energetically available for. But you can be positively energetically available for something amazing. But if, let's say, life happens, or because we've got to remember, guys, we're not just part of our own manifestations, we're also part of other people's manifestations. That when something happens, if we are always regulating ourselves by what happens on the outside, something that's not even really to do with us, or something that's not even really like connected to our life, what happens off the back of that is we determine that changes our internal state. And so when you regulate yourself based on your outside environment, whether that's the weather, what's happening at work, you know, whether or not you're getting on with your partner, when your whole life is subject to the outside environment, you will burn out much quicker because you are physically stepping on the accelerator, which what we'll do is we'll call the accelerator your stress response. We're stepping on the accelerator every single day and you're just burning the engine out because you're constantly over revving the car. And so when we are constantly checking the outside environment to regulate how we feel and burning out the gears, right? Burning out, that is physically what burnout is. So burnout's easy to explain when someone goes through a lot or things have been really hard for a window of time. It's easy to explain. What most people don't realize is that burnout can happen from simply over time, small things adding up and you not regulating yourself internally, you not restoring yourself internally. And this is what happened to me. So I went through these periods of burnout and escapism, burnout and escapism, burnout and escapism. And then I often would be much happier or be more joyful when I took actions like left my corporate job, etc. But that's because I didn't then have to regulate myself based on all the people I work with because I worked on my own. Then when things were going through a great period in, you know, internet and social marketing and my business fucking exploded, of course I was amazing because my business was amazing, right? And it wasn't really until 2021, so that's like 2 years ago at this point, where I realized that actually my life, in how I felt about myself, my self-worth, my self-confidence, was actually all based on what was happening on the outside of my life. And it was at this point that I was like, this has to change because life is going to hit me. Like people are going to die. Businesses will close, you know, partners I had, you know, at this point, obviously Josh and I are great getting married, but like people leave, friends move on. Like if you are constantly regulating yourself by what is happening in your outside world, you are never going to feel regulated. You're never going to feel calm. And if you don't know anything about the nervous system, go back and listen to some of my previous podcasts. But if the nervous system, if you never get to step on the brake, so you never get to step into the parasympathetic nervous system and relax. So you've got react, which is your accelerator, and then you've got your relax system. If you never step into your relaxed system, your body never has the ability to heal, to grow, to really absorb what's happened to you, to expand to the next level. And our energetic expansion, our energetic growth is basically how we manifest, right? So if you are constantly in this like go, 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 and this doesn't mean make sure you meditate for 20 minutes a day, guys, that's not what I'm talking about. If you are running yourself into the ground, and most people do this without even thinking they're doing it because, you know, they go to the gym and they eat real healthy. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're doing all of those things and never stepping off the accelerator to give yourself the energetic space to process, to heal, to grow, to understand, and to actually give your nervous system a fucking break, if you never actually step into that, you will burn out so freaking fast. It's unbelievable. And what happens over time is much like a car, right? If you ran it in second gear down the motorway, eventually it would only go a little bit, it would go in spurts, and the spurts would then be a snapback. The spurt would then be a snapback. The spurt would then be a snapback, right? And that's basically what started to happen to me from 2021, is that I would have a burst and then I would snap back, and then a burst and I would snap back, because my nervous system was physically saying, I ain't got any more fuel, babes. We're out of fuel. And this is what happens when we don't realize how our lifestyle or how we regulate ourselves is affecting us. So I regulated myself based on my environment. And when I recognized I was doing this and I needed to take all that work internally and be able to regulate myself no matter what was happening in my environment, this is when I started to feel differently about things. I started to feel genuinely happier. I didn't care whether somebody else did well, as in I was happy for them. I genuinely was happy for them. I didn't feel triggered. I didn't feel like, oh, why not me? Because I was regulating myself based on me. And so the reason why burnout happens to so many people is we are regulating our lives based on what is happening outside of us, rather than doing the inner work to face up to our triggers, to face up to what we believe about ourselves, to face up to how we are actually behaving. Because the truth is, guys, I think I'm a healthy person. And then what I work out sometimes is I've had a drink 5 days this week. Or I work out that actually last week, because I didn't eat properly, I ate so low calories that I'm actually exhausted. Or actually I overate the week before because actually I went out for dinner 5 nights. Or the week after that, actually it turns out that I didn't get as much sleep, or whatever it might be. But overall, on the outside, you can look like a healthy person. You can be doing all the right things. But the truth is, unless you are actually stepping off the accelerator and onto the brake and fully regulating your body and your nervous system, your capacity to do things, your energetic capacity to grow a business, to make money, to raise a family, to grow a career, to have a life, is short-lived. And this is why a lot of people do things in short bursts and they collapse. And why you see a lot of people start a business, crash, get into a new relationship, crash, because they physically don't have the energy to sustain anything. But the truth is, I don't want to be in business for short bursts. I don't want to be in my marriage for short bursts. I don't want to be interested in things for short bursts. And someone with ADHD, I have understood, right? I have aggressively understood how bored I get and also how hyperfixated I get. But I'm learning to work with it by regulating myself. So burnout, what does burnout look like? So burnout isn't just being real tired or getting ill at Christmas, right? That's not what burnout is. Burnout is things like feeling like you've lost all drive for life. Burnout is feeling that you're emotionless or sometimes numb. Burnout is sometimes feeling that you look at things that you used to make you happy and just feel like, okay. And it's kind of like this sense of passiveness. Sometimes it comes with depression. Sometimes it comes with anxiety. Sometimes it comes with other feelings. And sometimes burnout just comes as this feeling of nothingness. And I can tell you, as somebody who is a very passionate, aggressively on it, loves my life, loves the things I'm really good at, loves the things I do, loves to go through a period where you feel absolutely fucking nothing. I'm gonna feel myself getting emotional now, which is always a good thing. I don't push my emotions down now. That's the other thing, is whatever happens when you're burnt out, because you don't like the feeling that you should be feeling happy and you're feeling sad, you push it down. And one of the biggest things I could tell you is you have to process your emotion, because otherwise you're living in the past. Your emotions are memories of experiences that have happened to you before. And so when you push your emotions down, you're actually staying in the past. So when emotions come up for me, I look at them, I let them, a great analogy that I heard in a great book is let them be like waves and wash over you. Like you can't stop the ocean, right? You can't stop the waves coming, but if you let them wash over you, they're gone. And so where was I going with that? Yeah. So to be someone who aggressively loves life, to then feel nothing, to then feel listless, to feel emotionless, to feel like you're going through the motions, to feel like you're ticking boxes, when I aggressively do not believe in ticking boxes. I believe intentionality is everything for manifestation, for creation, for joy, for abundance, right? Like I don't want to go on a date night with Josh because it ticks a box. I want to go on a date night with Josh because I want to spend time with him and love on him and be, So what you've got to remember is intentionality is everything. And when you are checked out because you've had to, your body is not on the brake because it's not in relax, and it's not on the accelerator because it's not in react. It's not like running 1,000 miles an hour because it physically can't. You're somewhere in the middle. You're basically in neutral. But rather than neutral being a good position, it feels fucking awful. And that's what burnout really is. And this is why most people are burnt out, but they label it as something else. And I'm not going to use those labels, but often it gets labeled as something else. And what I think is really important is to understand what happens chemically in your body. So there's lots of kind of, and again, not a doctor, health conditions, medical diagnoses that get attached to this kind of window or this period. But, I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, like random pain that's not explained. I've been, diagnosed with ME before, which is very similar. And I've been diagnosed with, someone said to me before, are you depressed? And I'm like, no, and I think a lot of these things they're much more common with people who are neurodiverse, people who have ADHD, people who have sensitive nervous systems, because our nervous systems are more sensitive, right? That's just like a fact. So when you're in this state of neutral, this isn't because this is your body in freeze. This is your body basically holding on, because it's like, well, we don't know how to be in relax because we've literally conditioned ourselves. We have no idea how to do that because that's programming. We physically don't have the capacity to be in react and run and drive and do all these things. So we'll basically just freeze here so we stay alive, right? And that nothing happens in that space energetically, emotionally, like practically, nothing happens in that space. You can be perceived as super functional. Your life could be actually functioning fine. No one would have a freaking clue, but you basically feel nothing. That for me was probably the worst period of my life. As somebody who was very attached to regulating herself based on her outside environment, and as somebody who loves the feeling, loves the rush, right? ADHD with dopamine junkies. To feel nothing is basically torture. And that's what burnout is. And so chemically, sometimes this is called adrenal fatigue. Sometimes this is called fibromyalgia. Sometimes this is post-viral syndrome. And sometimes burnout can, of course, come from medical conditions, right? Again, not a doctor. But what I want you to understand is that trying to fix it just from a practical point of view, like boost your immune system, without processing emotionally how you ended up here, without processing the beliefs about what you believe to be true about the next stage of life, without somatically clearing what's happening in your body and where you've stored the past, where you've stored the stress, where you've stored the anxiety, where you've stored the trauma, if that's appropriate, like without actually clearing and doing that work, like you're just going to end up right back where you were. And this is me. I spent the first 35 fucking years of my life in and out of burnout. And I can tell you that when it happened again in 2021, and it was like a snap, like I could tell you it was a full-on nervous breakdown, right? Nervous system breakdown, right? That's where it comes from. And I've had two, and I'm 35, right? Is because I was regulating myself based on what was happening in life rather than based on regulating my internal environment. This is why we must regulate ourselves. This is why we must do the things. And it's not just eat good food and work out, guys. That's not health, right? Health is everything. Health is the way we think, the way we feel, the way we sleep, the way we hydrate, the quality of the nutrition we eat. It's what we read, it's what we consume, it's who we're friends with. It's a whole fucking lifestyle. And this is where I've been doing my work. And this is where I've poured all of my resources, all of my knowledge and everything into, because I truly believe this is what the world needs in a time that is in a post-pandemic era, in a post-economic crisis era, or present for some people, right? Like there is collective trauma that physically needs to be processed and healed. And if we aren't actually processing and healing and growing, we are going to end up right back in burnout. What I'm seeing so many people do, and it's frustrating the shit out of me, again, trying to regulate myself based on my internal state, not what other people are doing, is seeing people trying to go back to what they were doing 10 years ago. Is people trying to build businesses based on what worked before, based on what they did 3 years ago, based on what they did a year ago. You are not the same person as you were a year ago. If you have had burnout, been through something, gone through an experience, you are not the same person. Therefore, you cannot create the same way. Everything in life is always moving. So if we are not moving progressively forward, healing, releasing, letting go, clearing, we are actually going to end up in a worse position than when we were before, because actually you don't have the energy of 3 years ago. You don't have the gut health of 3 years ago. You don't have the business of 3 years ago. So what I want you to know is this, is if you are experiencing any kind of feelings of like being tired, burnt out, you've lost your passion, you've lost your drive, like the work is to heal, to restore and to recover. And it doesn't mean you can't take action while you're doing that. It doesn't mean that you can't take baby steps. It doesn't mean you can't keep working. That's not what it means. What it means is you have to be willing to do the work, or you are going to end up right back where you are now, if not worse, in a few years from now. Because your body energetically can physically only do so much. Mentally, you like capacity wise, you only have so much. And if you are truly experiencing symptoms of burnout, numbness, emotionless, lost your drive, lost your passion, dysregulated sleep, struggling with appetite up and down, your weight's fluctuating. And of course, these things are connected to other things too. But if you are battling those things on top of everything else that you're trying to do in life, and you're not addressing it, you're not looking to regulate yourself, you're not pouring into yourself, you are going to end up right back where you were. And I can tell you that from firsthand experience. So guys, this is why I made the Becoming course. This is the exact reason I made it. I started making it last year. I have poured everything into it. The bonus module is literally about to go live in that group right now. It is a transformational program based on self-regulation, based on healing, and to how to manifest the fuck out of life. And doing that through energetic capacity, through expanding your capacity for growth, not through hustling and struggle and sacrifice and pressing your foot on that fucking accelerator till you get there. Like, fuck giving up sleep. Like, actually, how about just be so rested and so regulated that when you go to do your work, you give it with such intention, such energy, such passion. You can do things faster because you're in such a great place, right? You're so full, you're overflowing, rather than the fact you're having to drain yourself to create something. That just doesn't work for me, because then what happens when you've created the thing but you're burnt out? Nothing, because everything is about energy. So my strong advice to you is this: if you aren't taking care of yourself, and this doesn't mean drink a bit more fucking water, it means doing all the things. And if you need help with that, my DMs are only one message away. But the truth is, this changed my life. This is changing my life. I'm still in this process. Nobody ever arrives, and I certainly fucking haven't. But for me right now, my priority, my focus, my goal is regulating myself and my life, so I am always the center of that universe. So I am always well. So I am always ready to grow and expand and create. And it isn't about having to work really hard for a year and then take your foot off the gas. And in the meantime, you've collapsed your nervous system. For me, this is about building a life that I can sustain, building a business that grows through my energy, building a marriage that's intentional, that we have the energy to be together, because I have done the work to heal and regulate, so that I'm not desperately seeking validation from the outside. I'm not needing the outside life to regulate me or tell me whether or not today can be a good day. And actually, internally, I am deciding today is a good day because I decided, and because I am the master of my reality. And that is truthfully what regulation is. And this is why the course is called Becoming, because it's about becoming the next level version of you. It's not about a step. It's not about a mindset trick. It's not about learning to meditate. It's about all of it. And when you do all of those things and you become the next level self, you become the healed version of you, that is when the magic happens. So, yep, that's all I had to say. I love you all very much. I'll see you on the next episode.